Okay, screen share should be turned on. You should be able to share.
I'm gonna do a test run.
Sounds like a good idea.
Say it's working.
Excellent. Excellent. Good deal. Hmm. Excuse me, I shouldn't have done that. I'm eating a Hershey Kiss. All right, we are live to YouTube. We're a couple minutes before 7. I'm going to pause the YouTube because otherwise I'll hear myself talking like at a 2-minute delay. And what else do I need to do here? I'll do a couple of quick last minute invites. And that's about all I've been inviting. Let's see. Oh, and Jackie Boy. Where's Jackie? All right, where are we? We are at 7 o'clock. We're still going to give it about another minute or two here till we get started. So chat amongst yourselves.
You're looking good, Scott.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. I'm actually today's the best I've felt so far because of the from the surgery, the seepage and the clotting and such up in my sinus cavity. I've kind of felt like I've had a head cold for the past couple of days. Um, and that's slowly subsiding. So, but I'm still feeling a little bleary. But today's been the best, less fatigued. Reading the like doctor's instructions for the general folks, they're like, rest the next day. You can go back to work on this, the day after that, like 2 days after the surgery. And I'm thinking to myself, I wouldn't be able to go to work like this. Yeah. uh, but thank you. Yes, things are progressing well. I go and do a follow up on Wednesday. They pull some stints out, and hopefully I'll be on the road to recovery with that, and then I can look at all the other health issues that old people get. Oh shit! Yeah, I told somebody earlier. I'm like, yeah. Well, now that this is kind of on the right track, I just found out I've got plantar fasciitis on my right heel, and that's not a whole lot you can do about it. Baby it and kind of give it 6 months or a year, and it'll go away. But that's been my 2020 on top of the viruses. It's not been a real healthy
Healthy
year
year.
for me.
Yeah.
All right, we have hit 7:02. So what I am going to do is welcome our guests that are with us this evening. Welcome anybody who's watching us on YouTube. We always open our meetings with our disclaimer that our meetings are an environment of education and awareness and are not an open market for the sale, purchase, or distribution of cannabis. We do not encourage or condone illegal behavior of any kind. um, as you can see, I don't fully have my voice back, and thankfully, Kristen agreed to. Let me close that document. Um, Basically, host our evening tonight, host our conversation. Um, I'm going to maybe turn off my video and I won't take a nap. I do want to participate, but I'm just not feeling pretty tonight, you know. But she's going to lead our conversation. She's going to discuss with us some logical fallacies is pretty much the topic of the evening. And somebody else wants to come on in. And so with that, Kristen, I'm just going to ask you to take the microphone.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. So my name's Kristen. I've been participating for a while. I'm part of Lowcountry NORML's board of directors, and I'm going to just kind of talk a little bit about some logical fallacies today, as well as just a couple of housekeeping type updates and that sort of thing. So just so y'all know, I do not have the greatest internet. So if at any point you guys stop being able to hear me, or if there's any sort of issues, just let me know, and I'll do what I can to try to fix it up. All right, so just a couple of housekeeping things first. I did want to let everyone know that we do have our monthly newsletter coming out tomorrow morning. A little bit of procrastination on my end with that, as I do usually get those newsletters put together, but that will be coming out tomorrow morning. And then this coming Tuesday as well is going to be our monthly meeting. So Tuesday, the 20th at 7:00 p.m., we'll be meeting to talk about just kind of our monthly normal things to touch base on. So a couple other things that are going to be coming on or going on in this near future is NORML is going to be having a virtual conference. That's going to be on the 22nd and 23rd, which is this coming Thursday and Friday, I believe. So during that time, it's a virtual conference. It's from 12 to 5 Eastern time, those 2 days. It's free to attend. Obviously, if you're able to donate, that's great. But it's also hosted with Green Flower Media, and there should be a lot of really interesting updates regarding legalization in the states, NORML's efforts, and information on the 50 years of advocacy. So that's an exciting thing that's coming up. And then also election day is, I think, 16 days away now. So it's coming up real soon. It's way closer than what I feel like it should be, but it is. So if you don't already, make sure that you do have your voting plan in place. I received my mail-in ballot a couple of days ago. Got that sent back out yesterday, so I'm down on my end, and I'll also be working the polls. I know Scott usually works the polls, but just got my poll information, so really looking forward to that. So, but yeah, just a kind of quick update and reminder, not that anyone needs it, because I know there are tons of election day things coming up on social media and all that stuff right now. And then with our Smoke the Vote, with NORML Smoke the Vote, again, if you're curious about where your politicians or candidates stand regarding marijuana policy, if you go to, I believe it's vote.norml.org, you can look at their report card. All you have to do is just enter your address, and it will take you to all of the people who are potentially going to be on your ballot. So great place to start off with looking. And then also, I wanted to check in really quickly. I know last week, Michael, you and someone else were talking regarding a lobby day or something, and I wanted to see if you had a chance to kind of do some of that back channel communication with that, or if you had any updates for us before I started on my logical fallacy spiel.
No, we haven't been able to talk since then.
Oh. That's fine. Yeah, I know the time just kind of flies by. So just wanted to check in just in case, to keep that on, make sure I kept it on the back of my mind. So just checking in regarding that. And then really quickly too, with worldwide news, something that's kind of exciting is this past Saturday, New Zealand actually voted to, or put on a ballot, and it came to a vote regarding marijuana legalization. So if you're looking for a place to vacation in the future, potentially New Zealand might be one of those places. I've visited myself a couple of times. It was great. So this is just another thing that's going to be adding to their list of making it great. So hopefully, fingers crossed that gets passed there. And kudos to New Zealand. All right, so go ahead and just kind of jump on in with my logical fallacy speak. So this was just something that's just been on the forefront of my mind for a little bit, just because with all the debates going on, as well as with people debating on social media, you do see a lot of just discussion back and forth, and sometimes some of the arguments that people come up with might seem compelling, but they're definitely not grounded in anything very logical. So these kinds of arguments are called logical fallacies. And basically, the importance of knowing what they are is both so that you are able to look at your opponent and hear what they say that's a logical fallacy and call them out on it, but also to make sure that the arguments that you're giving are going to be strong. So give me 1 second and I am going to share my screen. I have a little PowerPoint that I threw together to try to help out a little bit. All right. So just to kind of preface this, I am definitely not an expert with philosophy. This is some things that I learned about while I was getting my psychology degree. So if I say anything that either doesn't make any sense, or if anyone's like really good with logical fallacies and you're like, hey, that's not that's not quite right, you just let me know. I did do plenty of research while I was putting this together, but I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. So what I did for this PowerPoint is using the video that I had shared, I had looked up and done a little bit more research regarding certain kinds of logical fallacies. And I went onto Facebook and I scrolled through various posts that were about cannabis, the MORE Act and that sort of thing, using certain news outlets such as Fox News and that sort of thing. And I went through those comment sections as much as I could bear myself to go through them. And I found some different comments that did have certain logical fallacies in them. So some of these fallacies are going to be pro marijuana, so fallacies that people use while they're trying to fight for legalization, fight for the MORE Act, and are definitely arguments that while it's okay to talk with your friends in this sort of way, if you want to try to actually change minds, these are certain things that you would want to try to avoid to say as like a complete argument. And then some of them obviously are going to be anti-marijuana legalization and stuff. So we're going to go ahead and just get started. So the first fallacy that we're going to talk about is what's called a straw man fallacy. So in the video, it talked a little bit about this fallacy in particular. But basically what it is you have person A that's giving an argument, and person B comes in and tries to make person A's argument into something that it's not. So this comment again came from Facebook, and it was on a post regarding the MORE Act. And someone decided that the way that they would fight against the MORE Act would be to say that we don't have enough drugs and drug heads walking around and driving vehicles. Let's just make everything a little easier for the further decline of our country. Obviously, the MORE Act is about a lot more than just getting people intoxicated and making them drive badly. There's a lot of issues that kind of comes up with this specifically. But obviously this person kind of went way off into some other sort of place and said that this argument was for that specifically, which as we all know is not. So this is an example of straw man fallacy and why, yeah, we definitely don't want to be using that. So the next fallacy is called ad hominem. I might be pronouncing that wrong, do not speak Latin, but basically this is attacking someone personally and not the argument. So again, here are a couple of examples. The first being someone saying that if you're pro marijuana, that you don't care about your kids. Definitely attacking the person, saying, hey, this person doesn't care about their kids, so that's why they're pro this. The other one is talking regarding if you're against marijuana, then you are in the utter depths of lamitude, and you vehemently ignore all the benefits. While both of these are certainly opinions that you can have on people, they're definitely not arguments that you would want to use for or against, and they have a lot of different sorts of issues that come with them. Red herring is when you start a new argument to avoid the original one. So I've definitely noticed this a lot with everything that's going on politically, with the elections coming up. I feel like a lot of times when you try to fight for one thing, it kind of becomes a generalized argument of like party, which is what the examples here show. So in response to this, the MORE Act or marijuana legalization, these certain individuals decided to make it about a Democrat versus Republican kind of thing, which again, I feel like, especially right now, this is a very common fallacy that's used. So when we're talking about the MORE Act or when we're talking about legalization, while it definitely is a bipartisan thing right now, but to bring party into it is just to kind of avoid the original argument and try to bring up something that's completely not even relevant. And these kinds of arguments, all of these fallacies are definitely good for swaying people, especially if the people don't recognize that it's a fallacy. So if you were really against something and you see this kind of argument, it's a lot easier to just agree with this argument because it kind of makes it easier for the person that's arguing. So instead of like facing the argument head on, you kind of divert your way around it. So it's a very common thing to be used. And again, in certain situations, like if you're talking to your friends or something like that, these fallacies aren't as huge of a deal. But the fallacies are definitely a problem if you're trying to actually change someone's mind. And then with an anecdotal fallacy, this one is referring to using personal story as evidence. So obviously, when you experience something, it's something that's going to affect the way that you see things in general. And in research, we consider things such as I can't remember the word is off the top of my head. When you study one person particularly because they have differences that are kind of out of the norm, that kind of research is important, but it's not important in the same ways that research in like a clinical trial with randomized patients and lots of different people are important. So one person can have an experience that's very different than person B. So the example that I use here was a pro-marijuana statement. This was talking specifically regarding the fact that marijuana is not a gateway drug, which, as we all know, it's definitely not. But this person's argument was that because they themselves didn't use hard drugs and none of the smokers that they knew used hard drugs, that it's not a gateway substance. So again, absolutely not saying that marijuana is a gateway substance, but it is important to make sure that you use arguments that are going to have a little bit more ground and base than just personal or anecdotal evidence, because it just doesn't stand in comparison to more research or larger population type evidence. And then false dilemma is the idea that there is either one option or there's the other option, and there's nothing in between. So this is an argument that not only people use in general. People like to say, well, why are you doing this when you should be doing this instead, as if you can't be doing more than one thing at once. So in this argument, this is again regarding the MORE Act. Someone said that there are more important things going on than pot right now. Of course, all the potheads are for right now, but our country is at war. Fix that first, then go to that. So obviously, there are a lot of different problems in our country. There are a lot of different problems in general. But to say that you have to focus on one problem or the other is definitely not the way that politics or government works. Like it's not that you have to choose one thing or the other. Another really popular false dilemma argument, I think this was one that was in the video as well, was America, love it or leave it, as if you can't change it. You can't do anything but love it or leave it. There's no in between. So that is another example of this false dilemma or this either or. And then slippery slope is if A, then Z. So this is if the one that I feel like is very common for anti-marijuana is, well, if you legalize, then your kids are going to all get high. And if they all get high on marijuana, then they're going to do this drug and then this drug, and then they're going to become addicts and then they're going to be homeless. There are a lot of steps in between smoking marijuana and becoming homeless, that very, very much so. So to say that this is going to lead to that is a definite fallacy. On the flip side, you could also kind of look at these sorts of arguments, such as maybe if you all smoked pot like we can in Canada, things would be less violent in your country. Think about it. While that is a great sentiment, and I definitely agree that everyone does deserve the right to be able to smoke pot if they want to say that if everyone smoked pot, then violence would be gone is, again, a logical fallacy. So you just have to make sure that with these kind of anecdotal type things that you say, that if you're using them in an actual argument, they might not have as much value as if you're just kind of talking with friends or that sort of thing. And then the last one that I wanted to talk about today was moral equivalence. So this is saying that one thing is morally equivalent to another thing. So this comment was the reason why I had stopped looking through these Facebook comments. This person was responding to the idea that the MORE Act, once it was passed, that people who were incarcerated for possession would be released. They said that that was not fair or not good, because if they had committed murder and the next day murder was legalized, should they be released? And then they went on to say, same difference, right? The underlying case is that they're both crimes. Can you comprehend that? And that's, again, just obviously they were not very happy with the person that they were talking to and kind of ad hominem them. And then they went on to say one might be worse than the other, which is true, but technically they're both crimes. So again, trying to kind of equate possessing cannabis to murdering a person is a moral equivalence. That's a problem. Like, you can definitely not compare those two things because they are very different. And to try to compare the two is not, it's not based in any sort of fact or logic. So that is just kind of like the brief, really quick rundown of a few of these logical fallacies. I know personally that I've noticed quite a few of these in talking with like my family and people from my hometown and stuff. I think that logical fallacies are things that people tend to like to use, again, because a lot of times they're a lot easier to use than going into the argument itself and trying to come up with factual, logical, concrete evidence. So again, definitely not an expert, but to kind of bring light to some of these fallacies is good, especially as we are consuming a lot of debate type material, both on TV, social media, that sort of thing. It's good to keep them in mind as we're listening to things, and also as we ourselves are trying to fight towards cannabis advocacy. So that is just my overall gist of what I wanted to talk about today. And I wanted to see if anyone had any sort of thoughts, any ideas on like logical fallacies that you know that either you have given towards an argument that you've noticed, or logical fallacies that you hear a lot that just kind of rack your brain and make you angry.
Okay, I think I got the right button pushed there. I never hear anybody. No, I do it obviously myself. But again, the one that just drives me crazy and it still persists is the gateway, the gateway, the gateway. And when I get hit with that, like on the spot, I'm like, oh, come on. You know that's been disproven, right? But I don't have facts with me necessarily on that kind of stuff. And that's why I kind of brought this up, because one of the first things I thought about as we were sort of wrapping that up, I'm going to hit my quick button here. Let me push this button. Where's it? There it is. I do want to remind you all that there is the fact sheets here at NORML slash it's NORML slash marijuana slash fact sheets. There should, I don't know if there's more of them. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Okay, that's all of them. But click into each one of these and you will get information like this one's marijuana regulation, impact on health, safety, and economy. We actually have a couple of document stands that we take along with us when we set up our NORML booth. And these are printed out for people to take along. I think we got about 16 pockets because we have most, if not all of them in there. And the categories that they cover, you'll see marijuana regulation, impact on health, safety, and the economy, marijuana regulation, and teen use rates. I mean, there's a great one because quite often you'll say, oh, yeah, you go ahead and legalize it, and all the freaking high schoolers are going to be stoned. Statistics are telling us that teen use in legalized states is going down because of the regulated market, that kind of thing. So where there's a regulated market, teen use is going down. Relationship between marijuana and opioids. We've heard quite a bit about how some are starting to now call it the, oh, geez, not the gateway. No, I forgot. The recovery drug. Oh, it'll come to me. Dr. Uma uses this all the time. Anyway, talking about marijuana and actually helping people get off of opioids. Uh, uh, and again, you can go down the list as you see, but just visit the fact sheets at normal.org. Find one that kind of fits your interest at that point or the argument that somebody's bringing up. They're pretty handy. The one on cannabidiol, let me click in on that. I'm going to say that's somewhat limited. But they have a couple of the basic questions. What is it? Is it available by prescription? Are commercially available products safe and effective? And they do, I believe, talk about inconsistency. The consistency has been a varying issue, again, because it's not a strictly regulated market. Um, of course, a lot of people have talked about the 2018 Farm Bill on cannabis and CBD and hemp, traditional hemp sources. So it does go into some of those things, but it doesn't go into a whole lot of the medicinal benefits. Um, Again, that is the emerging clinical applications book that I showed you all last week. But I just wanted to sort of throw this out there. That this is something that we can at least try and use as a tool to help prevent us from, uh, using the "What are you fucking nuts?" that it's a gateway. That's usually what I want to say. uh, but uh, yeah, sometimes I know where these are pretty handy that if I really needed to on site, I'd pull it up on my phone and go, here, read this. Learn, copy, paste. I do that a lot too. And the nice thing with these particular things, I mean, they do reference actual studies. Now I am clicking into, oh, this is a new one, a 2020 analysis by it's ACLU. The racial disparity one that I have printed is older information. Um, but that was a very good study. Actually, you can access the study right there. Oh, excuse me. I'm starting to fall apart here. Anybody else want to chime in on their thoughts on logical fallacies or some that are really challenging to them?
No comments other than that really good class. Thank you.
I think a lot of it too is trying to kind of pick and choose your battles as well. I think in the time of like Facebook, social media, I noticed myself even just as I was trying to find those comments, like stopping myself from just like unloading on a person. It can definitely be kind of difficult to try to pick and choose those battles sometimes, especially when people can just throw out whatever they want to throw out these days. So
Sometimes it's easier to scroll on by and just like let them live. You can't educate each and every Facebook or social media user. Unfortunately, we try, but it doesn't always happen. And the thing that kind of scares me sometimes is I don't know if I'm arguing with a bot. So why bother? Sometimes I'll actually go, do a little looking, and I look at these accounts and I go, this can't be a real person. I'm not going to argue with them. But yeah, that's kind of crazy, and then that just wastes your own our own time and our own efforts. But all righty, I enjoyed that. I had watched the video a couple times actually too, because these are things that I do fall into the same traps from time to time, and and the better educated we are, I'm going to go ahead and turn off this sharing here. The better educated we are, the better chance we have of having an effective argument. So uh, that's all I've got for the evening. I'm actually going to go curl up on the couch and finish recuperating a little bit more. If you're available, we're looking forward to seeing you on Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock for our monthly meeting. I think I have to create a Facebook event for that. And then we'll share that out tomorrow morning as we share out the newsletter. I'll share that link. And otherwise, we will be here next Sunday at 7 o'clock. I don't think I have any more surgeries coming up this week or anything. Man, I mean, real quick look at the calendar before I say too much more. That is going to put us just a week before elections. We're probably going to talk a little bit about politics. Kind of as Kristen had mentioned, I had already gotten my mail-in ballot because I work in the polls and I work outside of my precinct. I went through the other day, and actually the toughest for me was picking school board members because where do you find out their opinions on stuff? And there's only a couple of things I'm concerned about in schools because I don't have school-age children, and their enforcement issue, RSOs and things like that, and mandatory drug testing. Yeah, where do you find that? I think after I actually mailed, I saw someone that did a little um, roundtable with some of the school district members and such like that. I don't know if you could submit questions, but I just went and took the recommendations of one of the other groups that I kind of follow locally. So that's where we are with election time. If you haven't voted, like Kristen had mentioned, we hope you have your voting plan in place. I want to see marijuana favorable legislators in place and let the chips fall where they may. Um, yeah, we'll see you then next week. We'll talk a little bit about politics, and maybe I'll come up with something a little less boring to talk about along the way. I don't know about y'all, but my mailbox has been getting stuffed, and the TV commercials are just like endless. And I watch a lot of YouTube, and I'm too cheap to pay for the free for the uh, ad-free stuff. And boy, they'll hammer you with some of the political ads right now. So I'll try to be kind next week and talk in politics, um, and talk more marijuana stuff. Actually, what I'm kind of excited, I'm going to mention it real quick here, and I think what we may talk about. Um, there are a couple of states that have it on the ballot for November. Um, I've been out of commission, but I've seen that Justin at National has been requesting if some of us had been available to kind of jump on the phone and do basically telephone soliciting to Arizona and talk to voters there about pro marijuana stuff. They had some sort of auto dialer system set up. And I just have not been able to participate in that. But if anybody wants to call folks out wherever it was, I think it was again Arizona. But there are a couple of states that have it on the ballot. Unfortunately, we cannot do that here in South Carolina, so we have to do it county and or municipal level. And we'll kind of touch base on that as well. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap it up for the night and thank you all for joining me. And see you next week. See you Tuesday first, and then see you next week, 7 o'clock. Thanks all for coming.